What's up guys, welcome to Vintage Genetics, where it is all about classic bodybuilding. Today is going to be a leg workout, and yes, you've seen many leg workouts, but today will be a high volume leg workout. Why high volume? Because I want to save my lower back from further pain. It's almost gone, but I don't want to chase the heavy weights today. I want to go for that lactic acid metabolic damage, this toxic waste build up in the muscle to make sure that will cause the stimulus for muscle growth. So we're going to do more reps, more volume and less weight, but that will also cause muscle growth. And to ensure the maximum pump, I today took the new pre-workout by Jacked Factory, the unfinished line, incredible flavor. So I'm going to test this one out today. Of course, taking 2 scoops, making sure the maximum pump be achieved. And I also received the rest of my supplements by Jacked Factory today, which is quite awesome, such as the new oversized isolate tub. It used to be half the size, now it is 75 servings, so that's very awesome because I like to take a lot of whey isolate for sure, just like after this workout, post-workout in my cream of rice meal. But for now, let's test this pre-workout out, make sure to get the maximum pump. Let's get started on the first exercise. Alright, so the first movement, as always, will be the laying a leg curl, but this time it's going to be a superset exercise. The laying leg curl and the leg extension, so you fill up the entire leg right before doing the compound movements. It's been a long time since I've done supersets, but it's an amazing tool to create a very good pump in the leg. So let's get started. Alright guys, so this is a high volume leg workout, and it's been a while since I've done these, especially this superset, the laying leg curl plus the leg extension. Most people don't think about this when training legs, but when you're training arms, when you're doing supersets, it's almost obvious to do, for example, a bicep curl and then a tricep push down as the ultimate arm superset, or a barbell curl with a French press, for example. Literally training the biceps stretches the triceps, and training the triceps stretches the biceps, which is a synergy of blood rushing in the muscles. But the same exact thing happens with the quads and the hamstrings when doing these two exercises. It really fills up the legs really nicely. It allows for a very good warm-up of not only the muscles, but also, as I mentioned, the joints and the tendons. And you don't have to go super heavy either. So what you really want to focus on is, of course, properly warming up and then going as heavy as you can, but sticking at least above the 10, 12, 15 rep range, just to get as much blood in there as possible. Because usually supersets isn't really about overloading the muscle with as much weight as possible. It's mostly to get as much blood in the muscle as possible for a better pump and for some metabolic damage. And that damage is also a stimulus for muscle growth. So if you're doing supersets, don't try to do both things at once. Of course, you should go pretty heavy, but not super heavy trying to set records. That is something for those individual exercises without those intensity techniques, like a superset, for example. So even if you do a drop set, I still wouldn't see that entire exercise as something that I want to log in my logbook as trying to beat my previous weight, but more maybe trying to beat the previous amount of reps instead of the weight, with the same amount of weight instead of trying to go heavier. And that way you simply get as much blood as possible in the muscles. And when muscle cells swell up, that alone also gives a signal for muscle growth, which is why, for example, the supplement creatine works so well. It helps retain water inside the muscle, so intracellular water retention. And this water retention makes sure that the cell is swelled up a bit more, and that alone causes more muscle growth as well. So back in the day, I used to do pretty much only high volume stuff. Only when doing like a back squat or a bench press, I would go pretty heavy. But the total volume and reps and drop sets and supersets and stuff like this was a lot more back in the day. And I created quite a solid foundation of a physique that actually did win some local bodybuilding shows. But the moment that I went pro, that's when your weak points start to show as you compare yourself to other pro bodybuilders. And then you have to specialize your training in order to work on those weak points. And when you get to that point, following a logbook, focusing on specific exercises, perfect range of motion, perfect execution becomes more and more important, because for some reason you have weak muscle groups, and the reason is because that muscle didn't respond as well to your old training techniques as the rest. So for me, that would usually be the hamstrings, for example, or the back. And when I implemented the logbook method of logging all of my lifts and beating that lift with the same type of execution, then especially my back started to grow a whole lot, which does help me a whole lot in the Olympia placings as well. But the whole reason why I'm doing this whole higher volume leg training is that I mentioned that my lower back was a bit impaired, and if I trade way too heavy, the force will simply also go to other places in the body, such as the lower back. So exercise selection, execution, and how heavy you go all play a role in how that force is distributed over the entire body. And for me, sticking to a higher volume routine puts more of the effort into the legs itself, get more blood in there, and less strain on the rest of the body. And by the way, this video was recorded about a month ago. I still have a couple of videos that are a few weeks old, because I've been quite busy with moving houses, actually, which I want to update you guys on. But since I still have some quality videos left, I didn't want to leave them unuploaded. So this is exactly how I like to train still to this day when I get something that is bothering me, like the lower back or even the shoulders or the triceps. I stick to higher volume, lighter weight routines. Alrighty guys, the first compound. So we already warmed the legs up nicely with that superset of the laying leg curl and the leg extension. So both the hamstrings and the quads and the knee tendon and the joint all are nicely warmed up. So now we can get started on the first compound. Of course, the ATX belt squat. Going to be a high volume exercise, 15 to 20 reps on all working sets. But first, warm up incrementally until we reach that working set weight. So let's get started. Okay guys, I said it once, I said it twice, I probably said it 50 times, but the ATX belt squat is an amazing exercise. So as you can see, if you only look at my legs, it's just a regular squat. You go up and down, you squat down, you work on the quads, the deeper you go, you work on the glutes and the hamstrings, and yeah, that's pretty much what a squat does, a compound movement working on multiple muscles in the leg. So the entire leg will be developed if you continue to do squats. However, where is the weight that I'm actually pushing up and down? The weight is not on top of my back, it is around my hips. This changes the load distribution on my body. So there's nothing pushing on my upper back, my lower back, or even the connection between the lower back and the pelvis, which is where my lower back pain usually stems from. It's literally pulling on my hips, totally disconnected from the lower back. And that means no matter how heavy I go, no matter how deep I go here, pretty much no matter what I do, the lower back will never be an issue. What you always should do is, of course, control the weight on the way down and explode on the way up, but just keep correct form, because you're still trying to balance your body out a little bit, but the belt squat is designed in such a way that all of the pressure is taken off the lower back, which prevents axial loading, which means loading on the spine. And loading on the spine actually causes a whole lot of fatigue. Say that you have 100 fatigue points to spend, and a back squat would take up like 60 of those points with the same stimulus to the quads. A belt squat would take up maybe 30 of those points with the same stimulus to the legs. And that means you have 30 extra points left to spend on other movements to recover from that workout. But if you do a back squat that is super heavy, pretty much the entire body is tired. You will have to take longer breaks. You can feel that your heart rate goes up a lot more, that you need more rest time in between your sets. And that is because the exercise is simply more fatiguing, guys. Yes, of course, the back squat will always remain one of the best leg builders there is. But if it simply doesn't feel perfect for you, try out different movements like the hack squat, the Smith machine squat, and of course the belt squat, and be objective on how it feels on your legs as opposed to how it feels in your entire body. Whenever I did a back squat, my entire body felt like it needed rest, and when I'm doing the belt squat, I don't feel the same way. I only feel a good pump, a good fatigue, a good lactic acid buildup only in the legs, guys. And here my stance is a bit wide. It's not forward that much. As you can see, my lower leg is also bending forward, and that tells you that the quad is being stretched quite nicely. So I literally go as deep as I can until my calf hits the hamstring, and that's when I call it full range of motion. So all of the muscles are stretched out to the max, which causes the most muscle growth. That high volume belt squat is done, and the legs are nicely pumped up. You can feel the pre-workout coursing through the blood. But right now, it's time for the next compound, the leg press. And I'm not going to use the maximum range of motion because I want to save the lower back from any stress. And even though you think there's no stress on the lower back when doing the leg press, if you go too deep and your butt leaves the seat, your spine is impinged. Your spine is under a lot of pressure from the weight. So in order to prevent that, you should shorten the range of motion until you get better flexibility in the legs themselves. But until that, don't force it. Anyway, let's warm up first. Yeah, so the leg press is one of those, interesting movements you can do for the legs. You might think that just like the belt squat, there is no stress on the lower back. But this time, the weight is literally being pressed onto you, onto your upper body as well as you are being pressed into the seat. Of course, you don't have to stabilize anything pretty much because the machine is fixed in place. But if you do use a range of motion that is far too deep, your butt will be lifted off the seat and you will feel the lower back being worked as well. Some people even get a lower back pump doing simple leg presses. So in order to avoid this, I'm only going about a 90 degree, so about parallel. Normally what would be parallel to the floor, but this time my upper leg is parallel to the platform of the leg press. And that stimulates the legs good enough for some muscle growth, but not so much that my lower back is also involved. And I want to prevent that because the lower back here is at a sensitive point. That is something you will experience if you are bodybuilding for long enough. I've been bodybuilding for 14 years now. And I think like 7 or 8 years ago, I injured my back for the very first time. Nothing super serious, but ever since then, I believe it was a deadlift for the first time. I pulled like 180 kilos, without really warming up, because I wasn't really good at bodybuilding back then. But hey, from mistakes you learn. But ever since experiencing, some kind of injury in the lower back, it's been coming back here and there whenever my form isn't perfect on one of these leg movements, especially the back squat. If I go down too quickly, then I want to go back up. There's an enormous amount of pressure on the lower back, and my lower back simply cannot handle that, which is why exercise selection for your anatomy is critical. Okay guys, it's time for the finisher for the upper legs, the weighted lunges, and we're going to use the most manly kettlebells there are. And it's not really about the weight, these are 8 kilos per piece, it's more about the extra volume of weight it adds to the entire set. So every step you have 16 extra kilos, and if you do 20 steps, that's a lot of extra kilos, and that's volume that you are carrying around. So let's finish off the legs. So usually when it's a regular leg workout and not a higher volume leg workout, I would pick kettlebells that are heavier in weight and not pink. But this time I'm going for 8 kilos a side because I want to take more steps than usual. So normally I pick a weight that I can walk back and forth once and then pretty much hit failure. But now I'm picking a weight that I can walk a bit further with to improve the amount of blood rushing into the legs and to also prevent too much strain on other parts of the body. This might sound all boring, especially when you're a younger guy, because you just want to work out as hard as you possibly can. And yes, you should. 7 years ago, when I was 21, that's really when my bodybuilding interest spiked, because I won my first 2 contests. And of course, the training then was incredible. And I didn't feel any pain at all, especially muscle ache, and I loved it. But after a couple of years, guys, if you don't watch your execution, some things will start to hurt. Last movement of the day, the unilateral straight leg calf raise on the leg press. So I'm just going to do 1 set for this. Don't want to waste fatigue on a muscle group that's already strong. I want to put it all in the upper legs, but don't neglect any muscle groups. So we're going to absolutely go to the max with 1 leg. Let's go. Oh, wow. It's heavier than I thought. Okay, something very simple. So I'm using a calf raise on the leg press, also called a toe press, but I just like to call everything a calf raise because the calves are causing something to rise up. So I'm using 1 leg at a time, using the left one first to make sure that the slightly smaller or the weaker calf is being worked first, and then match the same amount of reps with the other leg. Now, one mistake I've made, actually the last 2 years, is, and even in this video also, is I've reduced the calf work and the volume by too much, thinking my calves are already good enough. But just like with my abdominals, which I will make a separate video about, if you skip them too much, if you neglect them too much, they simply won't grow, and they might even, shrink a little bit, especially compared to the rest of the body. So guys, if you want your strong muscle groups to stay strong, don't neglect them even for a bit. Alrighty guys, that was the high volume leg workout. So all sets were taken about 15 reps, sometimes even 20 reps. And that is to ensure you have to use less weight, less pressure on the joints, but still give more than enough stimulus to the muscle to grow. So if you have any kind of nagging pain in joints, and a deload isn't necessary for any other muscle group. So if your systemic fatigue isn't too high, then I suggest sticking to a higher volume plan for a while until the joint pain, the tendon pain is alleviated. And you can also take supplements, of course, like Joint by Jacked Factory to reduce the inflammation around the joints and tendons. Okay guys, that was quite intense. I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out vintagenex.com, for example, for this USA line, the oversized shirts or these Bermuda shorts. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to stay golden.